Frickin' Frack Show, a podcast for the fans by
This
the
is the
fans.
Frickin' Frack Show, a podcast for the fans by the fans.
Frickin' Frack Show, a podcast for the fans by the fans.
All right, guys, you're watching the Frickin' Frack Show podcast for the
fans by the fans.
My man. What's happening, brother?
Oh, nothing much, man. Nothing much. Crazy weekend. This is actually 1:23 when we're actually recording this. So, but nothing too much, man. Just did a lot of door dashing today and did a lot of being alone and just driving and doing nothing but, man. What's happening with you?
Not a lot, man. The in-laws came down, and my father-in-law always kind of cracks me up because he's always talking about the podcast. He's like, I don't understand how he's in Louisiana and you're in Nebraska and you guys make this thing work. And I just, it kind of cracks me up, hearing back from different generations on technology, I suppose, and how far we've come. So
it's definitely difficult to explain because I find myself explaining to people what a podcast is, and they're like, well, how can you do almost 80 episodes and not run out of things to talk about? I'm like, I don't know. It just feels like we're just getting started, Yeah.
Yeah. We were just talking about with our next guest who we'll bring on, how kind of the preparation that goes into this, we target who we want to have on the show, and then we build a schedule around that. And then, it becomes a snowball effect, and the conversations that are had are ones that interest us. So therefore we just assume, everybody else finds them interesting too.
What's funny is, we've been talking to this guy for a while, just about other things, So like, it's really just cool just to have him on, because he's he's like the great and powerful Oz, the man behind the curtain, and it's cool to introduce the people, because I think, truthfully, without these kind of people involved with, their artists and their celebrities, a lot of things just wouldn't be able to be made happen,
Correct. Yep. Without further ado, let's bring on our next guest. Our next guest for this week's episode, we got Rey Roldan. Our man, what's happening?
Hey, guys.
I usually press a button, but where it claps, but every time it's wrong.
All right, guys.
See, it didn't work.
Rey, we were talking off camera, man, and we were discussing kind of, the career path and what exactly it is that you do. Why don't you explain to the people that are watching and listening kind of your title as it sits right now?
Well, it's funny because when I try to explain to what I do, a lot of people don't quite understand it. For example, my parents, when I used to tell my parents what I did, they would always confuse me with being an actor or being an actual musician or something like that. So whenever they introduced me to their friends, they were like, yeah, this is our son, Rey. He's an actor. And I'd have to sit there and explain to everybody, like I do public relations and PR and publicity for artists. But I'm essentially the guy that gets people on magazines, in magazines, on TV. Whenever you see an interview being done on CNN with a musician, I'm the guy that actually pitched that,
Wow.
That kind of stuff. So yeah, whenever you're actually watching the red carpet of at the Oscars or the Grammys, and you see the artist walking down, you always see somebody behind them pushing them up against the camera, or hiding behind them, and that's essentially me. So.
And that's crazy because you try to do your research and you go on and it is 2022, so you use Google, and on there your parents wouldn't be wrong in a sense, because it does say musician, it does say journalist, it does say worked with actors. Describe how exactly did you get into this, man? Go back, take us back. How did this become?
Well, if you want to go really far back, I was that kid that actually would ride my bike to the record store. I was trying to explain. I was trying to explain it to friends of mine who who lived near this one record store that I grew up in. Basically, it was about 11 miles away from where I lived, and I'd be like probably like 9-10 years old and ride that far to get to this one record store. And I would sit there, and I remember like going through the racks, and I was one of those kids that I bought records because I liked the cover. You know, the band, like the band. What was what were they called? Missing Persons. Like, I love the cover of that of Spring Session M. You know, you had a cover of Del Bozio with her freaky blonde hair, and like this neon stripe against her face. I bought the Sex Pistols, like Nevermind the Bollocks, just because I love the cover, you know, that kind of stuff. And so like I would ride my bike, like, 10, 11 miles to this record store, hang out with the guy. He'd play all these songs. Like that's where I heard like U2 for the very first time. I heard the Clash there. I heard like New Order, the Smiths, all those bands. And like, and I would come home and mind you, this was like 10, 11 years old. So I've been into like that kind of music since then. And then, so now fast forward a little bit to high school. I became really like, I would hang out. I was like mostly a floater, would hang out with all like, the Burnouts and the Jocks and everybody. And I would actually get to know what kind of music they listened to because I used to write about it in the high school newspaper. I would so I'd actually do a lot of like, I'd interview my friends and find out what they were listening to. Then go to college. I went to college in Boston, big music town, at least at that time.
Cool.
And like, and I was going to concerts maybe 3-4 times a night. I mean, 3-4 times a week.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes like 3 or 4 concerts a night, but like, a guy started interning at this one recording studio, Fort Apache, where the Pixies recorded at, where like Hole recorded, Nirvana, all these bands recorded at this one studio. Like Juliana Hatfield, the Lemonheads, like all those bands. So like I was actually doing that, and I was also writing for the college paper, and so I was like really involved in the music scene. When I graduated college, I became a journalist. I started a magazine up in Boston that only went under about a year and a half ago, and it's been around for almost 20 years.
Wow.
But like that kind of thing, and I was writing for a ton of magazines. But living in Boston, I was clearing maybe $11,000-$12,000 a year. And imagine living in Boston and not really making that much money. So I decided, screw it, I'm moving down to New York and getting in the music industry, and almost immediately, like my first job was an intern. I was an intern at this one record label called Milan Records. They did soundtracks like for Freddie's New Nightmare.
Nice. And
what was like the big soundtrack that we did was Benny and June that had the Proclaimers. Like I would walk 500 miles on it, like that kind of thing. And it was a terrible job, essentially like stuffing envelopes and that kind of stuff. But I was only at that internship for two months before I went over to IRS Records. And I was working for my boss there. He was the head of publicity, and I was the one intern. I mean, well, glorified intern / crappy assistant. Got paid maybe $50 a week, And I was like working stuff like I was working like Stan Ridgway of Wall of Voodoo. I was working the Go-Go's. I was working like a ton of bands, like REM's catalog, that kind of stuff. And my boss ended up getting fired by Miles Copeland, like Stuart Copeland from the Police, like his brother who ran the label. He got fired, and Miles Copeland said to me, he's like, listen, we're going to escort your boss out of the office. You need to go to lunch. When you come back, I need to have a conversation with you. Mind you, I've only been in the industry for about 3 months at that point, 3 or 4 months. And when I came back, he said to me, he's like, what do you do here? And I was like, I'm a publicist assistant. He's like, okay, well, now you're the publicist. And then bam, and like I was instant publicist, and I had to like do the Go-Go's like 3-disc greatest hits by myself essentially. I worked Kirsty MacColl, I was like I was doing all these bands, and that was like the first entry into the music industry essentially. And then for 2 years, I kept on moving up the ladder very quickly. I was at IRS for no more than maybe 4 months before I got hired into Mammoth Records to be a full-on publicist, where I worked Juliana Hatfield, Squirrel Nut Zippers. Dylan Fence, Jason and the Scorchers, and then from there I was there for about 6 months before I got hired again. Moved up to Grass Records, which later turned into Wind Up. But Grass Records had the Wrens, had like Brainiac, had the Toadies, and even what do you call it? Even what Connor Oberst's first band. I worked at Connor Oberst way back when, before he became Bright Eyes.
Right.
And then I got hired from there to go to, what was the next job? I think then my next job was I was at Silvertone Records, and I was Buddy Guy's publicist all of a sudden. Like, I was the head of publicity with Buddy Guy, John Mayall, Stone Roses, that kind of stuff. And then while I was there, I got pulled into Jive Records because it was the same company, and they needed somebody to handle a lot of the rock and stuff. But I became Britney Spears' publicist for Baby One More Time, the very first Britney Spears record.
The hit.
Yeah.
Hold on. Time out. So at this point, how old are you? Because you went from straight out of college as a journalist. And so how old are you now at Britney Spears publicist for Baby One More Time?
I was maybe 25 years old.
Dude.
25 years old. Oh, I was Britney Spears publicist. What was I doing at 25?
For the big one.
I'm not even gonna say.
for the big one. You couldn't drop this ball. You couldn't. I mean, this could have prevented a lot more of the movement that happened after this. So
I know I get blamed a lot for pop music.
So they come to you. You get this job. I mean, walk us through that in that mindset.
Oh, I mean, what do you mean?
Actually, so in terms of was she well known at that time? Or
oh no, not at all. She was. Okay, I brought her from 0 records to 15 million. If not more than that.
That's right.
When I started working with her before Baby One More Time, I was a publicist for a year before that record came out. So
man.
I was we were setting things up, putting her at malls, doing the mall tours.
Mall circuit. Wow.
Yeah.
We've had conversations about the mall. Look, we were not lucky to ever attend a mall show, but man, so especially in the 90s. Nowadays it's a little different, but in the 90s everyone did mall shows.
Mm-hmm.
Early 2000s even everyone did mall shows, but we need to bring something like that back.
I know exactly, because there's no fans anymore. That's the thing I kind of hate about the music industry. I'm trying to change that, but there are no fans. When we were growing up, I mean, hell, I'd rip out pictures from magazines and put it up in my locker. If you asked me who was in U2, I'd be able to tell you every single band member, where from Ireland they were from, what they're who they were dating, what they were married, what kind of food they like, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And now people just know songs, they know playlists and that kind of stuff,
That's true.
There's no fandom.
And I'm definitely guilty of that. Everyone's really big into the band BTS. I love their music. I think they're incredibly talented, especially live, but I have no idea what their names are. I have no idea what they like to eat. I have no idea where they live.
Well, they live in Japan, I think, don't they?
I don't know. You tell me.
But yeah, no, I mean, it's been crazy because people actually I try to talk to people who don't know what I do, and they ask me what, and I tell them I'm a publicist. Oh, do you work with anybody famous? And I was I kind of don't. I almost don't want to say anything because they don't, almost a lot of times they think that I'm completely lying or completely faking it. Last year, I was working with Diana Ross. I'm working with I was working Spice Girls, I was working I'm working Ryan Key of Yellow Card, all these bands, you name the different genre. I'm working with somebody famous in there. Engelbert Humperdinck,
I know.
Crazy. So
Engelbert, man. I'm a big fan, huge fan. I can tell you the first time I ever heard Engelbert, it was the first I was listening. I was on my way to about 30 minutes away from here with my dad. I was about 6 years old, and I remember him playing Please Release Me, and it changed my life. No joke. The song, I was like, who is this man? And back then it was probably 98 or so. So the internet wasn't really a big thing where I can go to IMDb, you know. And I remember him giving me the CD, like with the, you know, with the flip book and everything, and being able to see the man singing. And I was like, you know, there's no way he's singing, you know, he doesn't, you know. And oh man, the memories of that.
Yeah. Well, the reason why I worked with Engelbert was because it was my mom's favorite artist. Both my mom and dad's favorite artists. You know, so I brought my mom backstage. Well, actually, I wasn't there backstage with her at the time. My sister brought her because I couldn't make it. But my sister brought her backstage to meet Engelbert, and like, you know, my mom was completely in shock. But Engelbert was actually really, really sweet, and kind of like really made a really great memory for my mom, you know. So
come on, man.
Like, I love that kind of stuff. I mean, that's one of the things that I absolutely love doing. Like, you know, when I have friends who are like humongous fans, and then I kind of either bring them backstage or do something stupid, like send them a photo, like an autograph photo. Like one time I was working with Sting, like, you know, I was working with Sting a few years, like, well, not a few years ago, this is going back maybe 15 years now. And he was in my office, just sitting at my desk. And I said to him, I was like, you know, we gotta make a call. I gotta call my friend Kathy. And he's like, why? And he's like, let's just get her. Like, I'm just gonna get her on the phone. You talk to her. So we did that. And she, to this day, she doesn't believe that it was actually Sting. And it was funny because I took a photo of him on the phone, and I was like, this is when you were talking to him. This was Gordon Sumner. You were on the phone with Gordon Sumner.
That's insane, man.
Mm-hmm.
You're so nice.
Well, you know, you haven't seen me when I'm angry, so
that's true.
Like, when I go off on people, actually I don't do that, but you know,
it's okay if you do. I think we all do.
Yeah, it's funny because I have a blog. It's actually offline now because people want me to come out with a book, but it's verbatim transcripts of my phone conversations and emails that I have with people. And it's like sometimes I take the piss out of them, but because if they email me or call me and say, hey, you know, like, pretend to be somebody else and try to like pull a fast one on me and say like, I need tickets to this concert, whatever, I'll play with them and they'll have like a real fun banter, and turn them down because, you know, they're not getting backstage or anything like that. But a lot of times I will actually do, like, you know, really nice things. Well, I'll get somebody, like, someone will call me and say, like, you know, this is my father's favorite band. And like, you know, and he really wants to meet, like, you know, No Doubt, and like, you know, and I'll get them tickets. I'll give them tickets, and then I'll also get them backstage passes. You know, just because they were nice to me. You know, why not?
Yeah,
I can do it. So
most definitely, man, and that shows the kind of person you are, because that, I mean, like you just said, like for your mother, life changing. Yeah, you know, life changing, man.
Yeah. It's a fun job. I'm not going to lie, you know?
Do you think it's like a word of mouth thing on how fast you were able to climb to get to where you are? I mean, I know our story's kind of held up at the Publicist for Jive, and then we'll move on from there. But to get there, is that just a word of mouth thing? People enjoy working with you?
I mean, partly. I mean, when I was a journalist, like, I was a journalist for about 5 or 6 years, 4 years professionally, before I moved down to New Jersey, you know, New York. And because I was a publicist, or because I was a journalist, a lot of the music publicists already knew me because I worked with them. You know, they were pitching me for stories. And so they knew the kind of, the kind of interviews I did. They knew the kind of person I was, because whenever I came to New York, I would hang out with them. And I became friends with a lot of publicists. Oh, yeah. And so when I came down to New York and I said, you know, I need a job, so, like, you know, at that point, the music industry was booming. You know, like, there were at least, like, you know, maybe 10 major record labels, and there were, like, indie labels were huge at that point. There's so many indie labels, and people were getting salaries that were, like, you know, through the roof. I was making probably close to over $200,000 at one point a year for being a publicist. You know,
man.
But it's like, you know, when I was, like, you know, to answer your question, a lot of it was one thing that I do with my artists, because I come from a journalist background, I know how to talk to them. You know, I know how to treat them as people, because you need to do that to write a good feature. You know,
definitely.
And because I'm actually able to communicate with artists and not treat them like celebrities and like be scared of them or anything like that, A lot of music industries people would see that in me. You know, whenever I would be around, they saw that I wasn't scared of people. You know, I wasn't like, and I could actually talk to them, and I could actually talk well without tripping over myself. You know? And so thankfully I was able to move around because jobs would open up quite often, and I'd be the first person they would think of. I mean, I'm not saying that by no means being patting myself on the back, but I got a lot of my jobs without the jobs being advertised. You know, people would hire me, would steal me from my previous job, but offer me a job and say hey, I have this job coming up, do you want it? And then I'd move. So in 2 years, I had 5 or 6 different jobs. You know, and each time was a move up. So it was crazy.
Wow. Was there any hesitation at that point of where if you ever received any calls and they said, we want you to do this, was there any hesitation, or did you just kind of trust the process?
Well, there was one call that I got that made me change the trajectory of my career. Because I was over at this, flash forward, I think we stopped at Jive. When I was at Jive Records, I got hired by Sting's company to work with him, work with Hootie and the Blowfish, work with a ton of bands. And Duran Duran and stuff like that. I was Lenny Kravitz, you name it. I was Fiona Apple, those kind of artists were were part of what I did there. And I worked for Sting's company, and then I got hired by Island Records to be a director of publicity. And I'd been there for 2.5 years, and I had gotten a call from Clive Davis to work with him. And he was really after me. Oh wait, hold on 1 second, right?
You good?
Clive Davis. Clive Davis.
Dude. Oh, Clive Davis, dude.
Woo! And you talk about record labels and how different things are now, man.
Yep.
Hey, sorry about that. My dog actually started choking on a bone.
Nope. Priorities.
Well.
Priorities. I get it.
Oh,
So I don't know. Do you so back to Clive Davis, I guess. So
yeah,
I was over at Island Records, and I got a call from Clive Davis's people to ask me if I wanted a job to work with him over at J Records. Over at J would be working with Aretha Franklin, working with Annie Lennox, artists like that. And I kept on thinking, I was like, this is amazing. I would kill for this job. And they offered me a very pretty penny to be VP of the company, And I kind of thought about it. I kind of played around with the idea, and it was almost double what I was making at Island. And mind you, at Island, I was making $200K, so easily. It kind of hit me as do I want that? Do I want do I want to become a VP of a major label, but also be at Clive Davis's beck and call?
Yep.
He's one of those people who call you at 4:00 in the morning and expect you to answer his questions. And if you didn't answer his questions, you'd be you'd be you kind of feel the brunt of it,
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't want to be that. I don't want to be. I still don't want to. I hate the term working for the man, but I didn't want to work for the man. I kind of wanted to actually start to call my own shots. Because again, not because I'm not patting myself on the back, but one thing I hated was when I was at a record label, I would actually be given my priorities. When I was working at Jive Records, for example, I was actually told to work Britney Spears, Backstreet Boys, A Tribe Called Quest, KRS-One, and put Buddy Guy and John Mayall and all the big blues greats on the side. Just focus on the stuff that brings us money. Don't focus on that stuff. And I thought that Buddy Guy needed the attention. He needed that. He needed it far more than Britney Spears did. And so when I was and I hated the way that a lot of artists were being treated. And so after I got hired by or when I got that call from Clive Davis's people, it made me rethink what was going on with me and Island Records and my career. And mind you, also at that point, 9/11 had happened.
Oh wow.
That was the same year as the 9/11, and so there's a lot of rethinking of everything. So I was like, and I said, screw it. I was like, I'm quitting. I'm quitting Island Records, starting my own company. And I wanted to, and I went back before I started my own company. I started my own company in 2004. But what I did was I went into artist management to learn how to do that, and the company I worked for, we managed Regina Spektor, we managed an artist named Rosie, we managed a bunch of artists, and I just wanted to get to know how to do that kind of stuff, so I could actually become a business owner, start my own business and be smart about it, know what I was doing, and not have to learn under my own name, because I didn't want to fail with, under ReyBee,
That would be very bad.
Yeah.
But you wanted to do it the right way.
Exactly.
Which, when people, it's the funniest thing, and I know it's for with experience of seeing people who have an idea and they open up a business with this idea, but have no idea how to run that business and run that idea through,
Yeah.
And it's like, and they flop. They flop very, very quickly because the experience is zero, and there's no, deep diving into learning how to do these, different things. And so, yeah, most definitely, man. Hats off to you for actually doing it right.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. As I was saying, with the being at labels and the priority structure, I wanted to work a company or create a company that catered more to the artists themselves.
Yeah.
And was able to get their story out, their narrative, and give every artist that priority, and not have this structure where we're going to focus on the people that bring us the money, and everyone else, the people who don't pay us as much, we'll deal with them when we have time. I don't believe in that. I think every artist deserves the same amount of time, the same amount of attention.
We definitely agree with that statement. A lot of people, we have a lot of fans of the show, and we get requests all the time of who to bring on, and and I understand everybody wants to say Britney, especially right now. Everybody wants to get Britney. But we never sideline people, but we're always looking for those people who are just not getting the attention that they deserve. And we think that's super important, man. I mean, the list we've had is incredible. I think we're at 3 pages of our guest list now, and it's just the people we've had on though have just been such an honor having on, and it's good to give those everyone the fair amount of attention, for us. We're pretty good with talking to celebrities. We've done it in person together, actually, over a weekend at Sweet Stock. And, we treat them like people, as you said. Whenever you had talked about that, it kind of ringed about us because, it's, we're big fans of everyone we meet, but there's a way to kind of, to give them the respect of being a human being and being a person. But also being a fan, Yeah,
and the thing is, you guys are pros. I mean, I'm not saying that to blow smoke up your butts or anything like that. I mean, I love some of the interviews that you guys have done in which you actually dig deep in.
Yeah.
You get your hands dirty. And you want, and you like to actually have the artists to talk about stuff that they want to talk about. Which a lot of times they don't get that opportunity.
They don't, which is why we create which is why the whole show's premise and creation had, begun, because, we always tell everybody before they come on the show, we don't want the True Hollywood story. We don't want the TMZ. We don't want the 60-minute, version of the same questions you've been asked for 30 years. We think it's super important not to be like, what's your favorite song? Even though, we might kind of put that in there, but we really do. We love diving deep, and we also love not having to bring up stuff like controversy, because I mean, nowadays there's too much of that in the world,
and it's so transient too. When you bring up something that's controversial right now, in about 2 years, no one's going to care about it.
Nope.
Right.
And that's and everyone's moved on, and even with the stuff with Britney going down, our thoughts and prayers go out to her. I mean, it's just been an ongoing situation, but, and I'd say in 2 years from now, everything, her whole life will be completely changed,
Absolutely.
Ray, something that was super controversial in 2001 and 2004 that I still find absolutely fascinating is the way the game changed. It was going from buying physical CDs, doing mall shows, doing mall tours, going out and looking you in the eye and shaking your hand, to the internet. How did you change with that?
Well, the interesting thing about that was I was at Island Records when the whole Napster thing started. So we were watching sales starting to plummet, and people were really worried. I mean, every Friday people were scared of getting like pink slipped, and it happened. I mean, a lot of people were getting laid off practically every Friday. So I was actually part of Universal's. I don't know if you want it, privacy protection, or like, I guess I forgot what we called it. We had something, it wasn't private. It was like, we tried to prevent a lot of the P2P networks from getting the files. So we were doing everything to watermark. We were trying to create new ways to stream music that couldn't be ripped. And I was actually at the forefront of that initiative. There was 2 people in all the Universal records, and I was one of the 2 people. Like the other person was a coder. So they needed me to kind of figure out how to be able to get music to journalists without it without it leaking, and getting on stuff, because like it was happening whenever the minute that you sent music to the CD plant or the record plant to start getting duplicated, that's when it leaked, and that sometimes that was 6 weeks ahead of album release. So
I don't remember leaks back then.
Yeah, it was crazy.
I mean, but I was a young kid. That was, I was only like 10, but I just remember, like, I think in 2002 was when Kaza was created, somewhere around there. Kaza.
Oh yeah.
And something a bit, BitTorrenting and everything. That's the stuff I remember, but I don't remember, like, nowadays you hear about the leaks. So and so's record leaked 6 weeks early. All over the internet, which that happened to a couple, quite a bit of people. Yeah. But I'm sorry. Go ahead. What you were saying?
Oh, but but the way that we started to change was like to really. I mean, there were so many different things that people were doing. I mean, I remember Radiohead had sent out Discmen that were glued shut. They sent it out to journalists, and and they made journalists listen to the CD. I want to say it was the record after the Bends, and like they would do stuff like that, or send out cassette Walkmen that were glued shut, that kind of thing. And what we would do, we would have like listening parties. Like I would have like journalists come to my office and have them listen to albums, have them listen to music, or like I would go to their office and play them albums and stuff, which was kind of weird because if you think about it, you're playing a journalist a record maybe once or twice, and then they're going to have to review it, after that. So that's why a lot of reviews back then around that time weren't that great. We're kind of crappy, because like they had to review it after listening to it 2 times.
Yes.
But we were we were lucky in that we when we were starting to create these different streaming technologies, I was able to test it out and get it to people, and that evolution was different. I mean, it was crazy because and I started my record, my company at the right time, because the record label started to collapse in on themselves, and and we were actually able to evolve and move move with the people, and I mean, it sounds corny, move with the people, but we were able to kind of get people music without it leaking. One thing that I like that when you're a journalist and you're becoming friends with a publicist, there's a trust thing that goes there. A real if you're a really good publicist, you're gonna have good relationships with journalists that you can trust them with music. And so I've been doing it for so long that I was able to send people music. I'd be able to send somebody a CD, like a burned CD, and say, here's the advanced album of so and so. Don't leak it, and
please.
And I was actually able to prevent a lot of it, but mainly because of my relationships,
Wow.
So.
Well, let me ask you something about that time, because you said, record numbers are, started dropping and everything. So, when let's just say when a band is on the top of the world, right? Their first record does amazing. Their second record might even do even better. It might do just a little less. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden you don't hear from 10 years. Like they just disappear. And this is a thing that has happened over and over with all these artists. And I won't mention names, but I know, and I know you know a million of them too. But like, why is that? Is that because the record, back then was? I know today might be different, but back then, what was the reasonings behind that?
Well, if you think about the way that a lot of artists put out their first record was written sometimes like 10 years in advance. It's like all these songs that they've had like collected that they've written, and they're really proud of. They put it on that first record. And back then there were A&R reps, who would sit there and listen to these songs, the demos of these songs, and say, yeah, out of these 20 songs, I like these 10 songs. These 10 songs are going to be hits. We're going to put those 10 songs on a record, on your debut album. And so when you think about it, there's a band called Trash Can Sinatras, who I absolutely love, from Scotland. Their first record was brilliant, absolutely brilliant. It was like packed full of hits. You can tell there's a lot of really good cohesion because all the songs sound the same, and like not sound the same, but they were produced the same. They had a real kind of indie quality to it that was without being corny, that was kind of bursting with life, because it's their first record. It's their one shot. They're going to put all their energy into making a mark, and so like, you have this, they deliver this record, record label pushes it. That record goes huge. Let's say it sells let's say it sells 2 million records. Now the band has a lot of pressure to come up with a follow-up. Are they going to go back into their stash of old songs and record those for the next record? No, they're write new songs because they want to show the evolution. They want to show that there's another side of them. And a lot of times these records are kind of rushed out. Like, they have like sometimes like 3-4 months to write a new record. You have all this pressure, and like a lot of bands try to, instead of actually, a lot of bands will feel like that pressure to deliver hits, because that record, that sophomore record is there's a lot of pressure on them. There's a lot of attention that's going to be going into this record, that if that record doesn't succeed, they're going to be dropped. And a lot of times that happened. You have a lot of bands that would come out with a second record. I mean, using Trash Can Sinatras again. Trash Can Sinatra's second record, brilliant, absolutely brilliant record. The production got a lot better because they got a lot more money. That took away some of the fans. Some of the fans heard that and said, wow, this is really polished. And then you also have the record label saying, now we need to find that follow-up hit. And they're going to sink a lot of money into that first song off of that second record. And if that song doesn't connect, it's like, they'll maybe release 1 or 2 other songs, and then the band gets dropped because it didn't perform as well as the last record.
Wow.
So that's why there's a lot of 1-2 punches from the bands, and then that third record comes about like 3 or 4 years later on an indie label or independently released or whatever. It
seems like there was so many bands, and especially like the rock, like the punk rock, like people like Good Charlotte, AFI, and different people like that. I remember like, I just love the albums back to back, bangers after bangers, and then all of a sudden it's like you just said, 4 years later, new independent label, and right on the CD on the right side, and it's great stuff, but it's just like I was watching a video about O-Town recently, and Trevor spoke about that. He said the first album was like this huge thing, and they said, all right, he said the record label said, we got to hurry up and do a second one, and the second one, the sales just did horrible.
Yep.
But the first one was like the biggest thing ever, and what helped them was that TV show they had went on and done, but the second album just did absolutely terrible.
Yeah.
Yeah, like it's a lot of it has to do with that idea of record labels putting so much pressure on the bands, you know.
Yeah.
And that's why, like, you know, I love a lot of indie labels, mainly because they allow the artist to grow. You know, they you know, obviously they want to sell records too.
Yeah.
But because they have limited resources, they got to get a lot more creative in how they're going to market a record. Record labels just throw money out, like, you know, with advertising and radio. I don't know if you know this, but, like, you know, to work a song to radio, you're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars. You're not talking about, like, you know, like $3,000 or $4,000. I mean, publicists get paid like per month, maybe, like, you know, if you're a good publicist, you'll get maybe $2,500 to $4,000 a month working on a campaign. You know, I mean, at one point, I was getting paid actually $7,000 to $10,000 a month to work records.
Man.
But now, like, these days, because the record labels have changed and budgets have changed, you know, like, you know, publicists don't get paid like just a few $1,000s a month, which still sounds like a lot of money, but there's a lot of work that goes into it. But radio, I mean, you're throwing a lot of money, tens of thousands of dollars, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars, out to work one song to radio, you know. And because of that cost, these bands are, like, you know, there's a lot of these costs are recoupable by the artist. You know, an artist goes in to record that, like, you know, to release that second record under major debt. They got to repay all that money that they just spent in the studio. And if they can't repay it, like, if they don't match the sales or anything like that, the record label, like, is going to cut their losses, you know, and just set the band free. So yeah, it's crazy world out there in the music industry.
Horrible.
Yeah,
it's just
scary.
horrible.
It's terrible. I mean, I'm telling you, that's one of the. I mean, without patting myself on the back, that's one of the reasons why I started my company. So, like, I want to kind of, like, help the artists build a fan base, you know,
yes.
and because, like, when you have a fan base, your fans are going to want to know your next record, what your next record is. They're going to want to know what you're doing. You know, if you're just a single, if you're just one of those bands that just has a song on a playlist that everybody loves, goes huge, they're not waiting for that next record. But if you have a fan, they're going to want to know what's going on with you. They're going to want that next record, you know?
Oh, yeah.
So talk about opening up your own company. So you branched off, and I'm sure it was a huge step, and you had to have, you know, put a lot of thought into it. What exactly drove you outside of helping the clientele? What drove you to do this for other people?
I just didn't want to be told by my boss what was important, you know, because because at that point, you know, TMZ was huge, Perez Hilton was huge, building those controversies, like that kind of stuff was what sold records, and it's that kind of stuff is so short-lived, you know. Like, it's like you like, you know, you have a controversy that lasts for maybe 2-3 months, and then, like, nobody cares about you anymore because you've been oversaturated. But yeah, like, you know, I wanted to start my own company mainly because of that. Like, you know, I wanted to like, I was a journalist. I love telling stories. You know, I'm also an author. I've written a few. I haven't written books that have been published yet, but I have books that I'm waiting to publish at the right time. Because I was always a creative writer in college and in high school and everything. So it's like I wanted to be able to tell stories, you know, and being able to tell stories through music is one of the things that a lot of artists do. And I love giving artists that voice of saying, like, okay, this is what that song is about. This is what my life is about. This is like, you know, I wrote this record because my son's autistic, and this record's about, like, my struggles coming to grips with that. I want to be able to tell that story, you know, help
the stories
the
you don't hear.
Exactly. And, like, you know, and humanize these artists, and like, you know, and I think that's really important, you know, and I think that that's kind of that's the exciting part of the job, you know, being able to tell these stories.
It's a big honor in a lot of ways, you know. It's because you definitely don't hear a lot of humanizing in the industry anymore. You know.
Absolutely. And it's like, because, and like, a lot of times, I mean, there's also a bad part of that, though, you know. One of the things that I hated was, I don't say hated, but I thought changed the game again was when a lot of artists started to handle their own social media, you know. and they would actually start posting things that without thinking. You know, they would sit there and without really knowing what they were saying, like they were like, you know, they would do something impulsively and they'd post something and not realize that they're seen as role models and people look up to them, and sometimes words can be charged and words can be misinterpreted, especially in different countries.
Definitely.
And when they have this direct connection with fans, it's great for the fans to be able to relate to the artist. It's not always great for the artist to relate to the fans directly, you know?
Yeah.
And like, you know, they need to kind of, and that's like, you know, that was one of the things that's really kind of dangerous. Social media was a boon to the industry. But it was also like, you know, a curse in a lot of ways. So, I mean, I've seen that happen so many times. But.
They're so accessible, like right now. Like I think fans get it kind of twisted, you know, because you have that DM option doesn't mean you have to use that DM option. You know, I mean,
exactly.
I've seen a lot of weird messages come across. And then the craziest thing is I've seen a lot of people take those messages and put those so the entire world can see it. You know, I think some things are just made to be private, and especially when your whole life's in a spotlight. It's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. And then you have those shows like, you know, Britney's reality TV show that exposed everything, you know, like Whitney Houston's show that exposed everything. You know, obviously a lot of the stuff that was exposed was done to trigger and was done like, you know, to sensationalize everything, because there were a lot of like, I'm sure there were a lot of times that weren't, that didn't make good, quote unquote, didn't make good TV, you know?
Yep.
And
like,
so they want the crazy, you know, they want the insanity.
It's like the truth, you know, it wasn't good enough for TV. So they, you know, like did a little spin to it and created this something, you know, things that are, you know, people are talking about 20 years, you know, 15, 10 years later, and it's not actual factual. It was just a little spin to the truth. And that's what people believe, you know?
Yeah. I've been on the sets for a lot of reality TV shows, like, and also a lot of fake reality shows too.
Oh, that must've been good.
Like, well, you remember that band Together?
Boy, do we.
I was the publicist behind Together, you know?
Oh man.
So like, you know, like we would actually sit there, like they would actually talk to me because I've been backstage, like I've seen the crazy happen. And they were like, what happens with, like, you know, when you were working with NSYNC, what happened with, like, you know, with this, so we can turn it into a story. And it was like, and it was neat to be able to kind of twist things that I actually had seen, like, you know, behind the scenes, into a narrative that made good TV for the sake of making good TV with Together, you know? So it's like,
what a fun band, what a fun parody spoof. I mean,
yeah, they were great.
They really were.
We have an unaired episode we'll show you sometime, Ray. I think you'll get a laugh or a kick out of it. So we got you for about 10 or so more minutes. I want to know what you're doing now. I mean, you have so many titles, man. Like, what are you currently working on?
What do you mean, in terms of artists, or
as terms of people, as your company working with?
Oh, well, right now we're I'm setting something up for Share. So, but I haven't announced that yet. I'm going to be working Roxy Music, or we're doing reissues of all of Roxy Music's first, like all of Roxy Music's albums. But like, you know, they've been remastered and everything. I haven't announced that yet either. I mean, that's coming in February. But like, you know, working with Roberta Flack. Do you remember that? I don't know if you guys remember that film Bustin' Loose from way back in the 70s.
Yep.
We're re-releasing that soundtrack for Universal.
Awesome. Is it going to be vinyl?
It's on vinyl, yeah.
Oh, yeah. That's cool. That's great, man.
Yeah, we just got done working with Lil Wayne. He put out a box set of vinyl of the Carter series, like you know, I think there was like 10 45s that you know, that were kind of incredible, you know.
I live next to New Orleans, Ray, so I live like, you know, in his zone and where he's from, and you know, where you know, Louisiana is all about Lil Wayne, you know, especially the Carter 1, 2, and 3. I mean, I love 4 and 5 as well, but 1, 2, and 3 was life changing in the rap game, man. Oh,
absolutely. Man. Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, like, it's like like I'm just getting done. I mean, right now I'm kind of getting done working with the Spice Girls, but we're going to be gearing up later this year for more stuff with them. You know?
Awesome,
but at the same time, we have a lot of other artists as well. I mean, Ryan Key from Yellow Card. I was Yellow Card's publicist for the last 5 records.
Come on, man.
And when they broke up, I'm still I'm friends with, and I'm still working with Ryan on his solo material, and we're releasing a record next month on for him. I don't know if you're familiar with Nathan Gray. Used to be Nathan Gray used to be in Boy Sets Fire, but he is he's doing a lot of solo stuff now that sounds more like the Clash and Bad Religion and Elvis Costello, more of like real punk vein and like that kind of stuff, So it's exciting. I mean, I love the fact that I can work with the artists that I want to work with, that I love working with, and like I get to call the shot. I mean, not to sound like I get to call the shots. I get to actually say I want to work with you. I want to work with you. I want to work with you.
Yep.
And I have a staff of there's 8 of us, and we're all working so many different projects. And I'm and I'm making sure that everything's going well. So it's kind of great,
Man, that's really exciting, man.
You've got a clientele list that you've worked with that's amazing, man. And I love hearing about the old stories and back in the day. And can you kind of shine some light on, have you had repeat clients that come back to you every time, or a lot of the time?
Oh, absolutely. I would say almost all of our clients come back. I mean, that sounds corny, but I mean, for example, the band Enter Shikari. I don't know if you're familiar with them. They're massive in the overseas. Here in the U.S., they're still considered a British band. But overseas, they played they headlined a Russian festival of over 100,000 people. They're on the Reading Fest. They're actually on the main stage at Reading Fest. They're on main stage Leeds. That kind of thing. I've been with them for probably about 11 years, I think.
Wow.
Again, I've been with Yellow Card. I mean, the thing with Yellow Card and Ryan Key, they kind of never really had the same publicist, because they've always maybe either they didn't really gel with them, they just didn't really like them, but but I was actually able to stay with them, and not only that, beyond that, become friends with them, and to the point at which I think I've been working with them now for about 10, 11 years, We're a lot of the artists that we work with, we've done like 2 or 3, 4 albums with them, sometimes more. Engelbert Humperdinck, I've been with him for about 9 years,
Wow, man.
So it's I mean, that's one thing I love, because you get you're telling that story, you're telling an artist's story, and an artist grows between albums, and being able to sit there and say, hey, that last record they talked about this, and now this record, this is where he's going with that, and being able to have that knowledge to relay that to journalists and podcasters and TV producers and people like that is invaluable.
Definitely.
If you only knew an artist for one album, maybe like 3 or 4 months, you don't really know that much about him. You could be the biggest fan, but you still don't know the artist, and I become friends with my artists, so enough that I talk to them and get to know them, so I can tell their story.
It's I always say you really don't know for us as fans, we really don't know the person, we just know the artist. And both people are, sadly, they're not separated, in the world we live in, but they are 2 different individuals. So I mean, you get the opportunities to get to know both people, and I think that's really cool, man.
Yeah, it's cool, and sometimes the persona that the artist puts out when the doors open and the press is and people are there is very different than what's when the door is closed.
Oh, we've witnessed this, which understanding, but yeah, we've witnessed a little piece of that.
What's the best piece of advice you think somebody's given you along the way?
Best piece of advice that I ever got was I mean, it's gonna sound corny, but don't stop listening to music. Because when I worked at record labels, when I worked at Island Records, I'd walk down halls and you wouldn't hear any music playing. You're in the music business. You need to know about music. You should know know your musical history, you know. And like I would always, like when I was a publicist, I would actually keep myself like, you know, at the forefront of the music scene by because I was a DJ as well. Like, you know, like I was spinning at clubs in New York, in New Jersey, all around the place. And I was constantly trying to find music that I could turn people on to. And like, you know, so yeah, like, you know, I'm constantly on Spotify's, like, you know, daily or weekly playlists that they create for me to kind of find out what's new this week, you know. I'm talking to people, finding out what their favorite band is now. And it's funny because like people ask me what's my favorite band right now. I don't have one, you know, because like I'm constantly, I could sit there and tell you about 20 bands that I'm listening to right now.
Yeah.
But like I don't really have a favorite band. I mean, a favorite band of all time, sure, but not really like, you know, new music. I'm just like exploring even old back catalog right now. You know, so
man. What I want to ask you, what inspires you to keep moving forward with everything you're doing?
Mainly I mean, it's a lot of it is because artists come to me and say like, you know, like, I want to tell the story. You know, I want your help to, like, you know, to like, for example, there's one artist that I've worked with in the past. His name was it was from the band The Wrens. I don't know if you guys know The Wrens. Huge indie rock band, you know, back in the, you know, like they've only released 3 records, like, you know, 3 records as The Wrens, but it was the biggest. They were poised to be one of the biggest indie rock bands ever, and they just weren't prolific. And one of the guys, like I've been friends with the band since I was their publicist back in the 90s. And one of the guys in the band, Kevin, like, you know, sent me a record, said to me like, you know, we haven't released any music in 18 years, but I want you to hear this record that I'm going to release on Sub Pop. And he's like, I trust your opinion. I want you to hear it. And I listened to it, was completely blown away. And I said to him, like, I want to be part of this. I need to know more about this. And his story is huge because like the Wrens were like, you know, were stuck in, they had written a follow-up that's been produced, like, you know, that was done. And then, one of the guys in the band has been tinkering with it for the last like 13 years. You know, they were never been ready to release it. They keep on wanting to release it, been threatening to release it. There's been New York Times stories about this record not coming out. Pitchfork's written about it. Stereo Gum, you name what, like these sites about this mythical Wrens follow-up. And Kevin wanted to release this record, and he wanted to make sure it was done right because. Again, 18 years have gone by, and like, you know, he thought people had forgotten about him, but he wrote this record. I mentioned him before, his story at least. He has a son who's nonverbal autistic. You know,
come on. Yeah.
He also works for Johnson & Johnson, and like, you know, he's not necessarily at the forefront of the whole entire COVID thing, but he's involved with he's like, you know, he's been doing this, and he's in his 50s. He's just got into his 50s. He's younger than me. I mean, I can't believe I'm saying that. I'm admitting how old I am. But he's in his 50s and he's not getting any younger. And he wants to put out music, and having to wait 18 years to put out a Wrens record, he just got tired of it. And he's like, I just need somebody to do this. And I want to be his partner on it. And I said, like, yeah, like things like that. When somebody, you know, like, I think that's exciting to me. You know, being able to,
motivating.
Like, yeah, and like having somebody put their trust in you. You know, and like. And it's like it's great. It's what keeps me going. You know?
And how's the pressure with doing that?
Yeah. I mean, the great thing about it, the very first piece of art, like very first piece of press that we got was like a full page story in the Sunday New York Times. You know, about it.
Wow.
And like, you know, and now Pitchfork. If you go on Pitchfork and look up the name of the band, Eon Station, there's probably about I think there's like 5 or 6 stories on Pitchfork about it. You know, it's like it's all over. Stereo Gum's written about it. Like, you know, it's been great cool. Being part of that. You know, that's exciting to me. You know, it's not about the money. It's not about the, like, you know, that kind of stuff. It's about making a mark and, like, you know, for these artists and getting their stories told. You know,
that's pretty much what our show's about. That sums up our show perfectly. You know, and I mean, that's important, man. Like I said before, it's an aspect that people don't get the opportunity if they were. I mean, I'm not sure about how record. Actually, you can tell us about this, but if you can kind of tell us about how like the record industry has changed versus when you start, when you intern to what to how it is now. Kind of take us with that, because like I don't really ever see like Sony putting up these interviews and letting the fans get to know the artists and just getting things like that, like you just said, this incredible album that's been 13 years in the making out.
Yeah, I mean, it's like I love what's going on in music right now. I love the fact that a lot of artists are taking control of what they're doing. A lot of big artists are going independent and releasing their own records and having artists hear music the way that they want to hear it. I mean, Tori Amos, perfect example. She went through the major record labels, was told what to do, and then she started to take control of her own music. And I mean, I can't say that I love a lot of the music that she's put out over the last few years, but she's doing it on her terms. And I love that. I love the creativity that the artists are bringing to the table that they weren't able to do before. People like Tanya Donnelly, who used to be in Throwing Muses and Belly. She's been doing the same thing. Like putting out music that she wants to put out and being heard as she wants to be heard. A lot of these artists are hiring the people that people independently and saying, I want this person to work my record to radio. I want this publicist to work with me. And assembling those teams are important because there's real synergy with the artist then. You're direct communication with the artist, maybe their management team, but creativity is so important now. Because you don't have stuff like radio to always fall back upon, because you don't have a lot of press to fall back upon, because a lot of print magazines are gone now, and a lot of a lot of these articles are people don't a lot of people don't care about record reviews anymore, which is a shame. So you got to be creative. You got to find ways to get the word out there. And the way the music industry is poised now, it's the creativity is starting to come back again. And I love that. I love that.
Me too. It's very exciting because I think for a while the music industry was at a standstill with many different aspects of the industry itself. And but one of my favorite things ever is when someone releases an album and it's just perfection in every way. And it might not be the greatest sales ever. It might not have the number one Spotify even album, digitally, but when someone does it on their own terms and it's something that they're proud of, it's incredible, man. Just to know they're this isn't some kind of feed or buzz. This is them actually saying, we wrote the songs, or we stand behind this album. It's just you listen to it differently.
Yeah, absolutely.
Stuff,
you feel good spending money on it, Yeah.
Like here's my $13 or whatever.
Yeah. Caleb, I am 1000% behind that, man. If I know that they wrote it, produced it, whatever, if the artist had a hand in it, I'll take my money. I'll gladly pay you for that.
Yeah. I'm the same way. I mean, it's like if you can hear that, if you really believe in the artist, like I'm one of the people who actually still one of the few people in the music industry who actually still buys concert tickets. I don't get on guest lists. I don't actually ask to be put on guest lists because I want to be in the crowd with the people enjoying the music the way that I should be enjoying it, and not in the VIP section with a lot of music industry people with their arms crossed, talking, drinking, and having those conversations while the music's going on.
I definitely know who you speak of, the people. I can relate,
bro. By that point, you're kind of watching your job play out in front of you, right? By that point, as a publicist, this is a story that I told. I'm here to see it now, right? The way that the fans see it. That's really incredible. I like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's great. I was there when do you guys know the band The Front Bottoms?
Yep.
Okay, so the Front Bottoms. Well, the Front Bottoms were a band that I kind of stumbled upon when I was going through clubs in New York, and they were this band that I saw them, and I was like a buddy of mine was kind of quasi managing them, and he said to me, he's like, check this band out. So I went to this one club in New York called Lit Lounge, and there was maybe 6 or 7 people there, and I was like, wow, these guys are really, really great. I want to be involved in them, And this was going back maybe about 6 or 7 years ago, and so like musically they didn't fit into anything. They weren't emo. They weren't indie rock. They weren't. They were like Say Anything. Like at that point they were like Say Anything meets They Might Be Giants. It was like real quirky indie rock stuff, young, and funny, like hilarious, and I they soon got signed to Bar None Records, and I was like, this is that's great. You guys came out with a record, and I actually watched them go from like 7 people to, then I got them on in like 2 years time, I'd gotten them on late night TV. I think we did Conan, like back when Conan was still doing TV. And then they got signed. Then soon after they got signed to Fueled by Ramen, and now they're headlining venues of like maybe about about 6,000 people. And
that's incredible.
Records are selling like crazy. They're like and everything, and it's like watching them go from 0 to like all of a sudden like 10,000 people is incredible. Being on the side of the stage and like watching the band perform and looking out into the audience and watching those kids singing back the lyrics. And I was with them when they wrote those songs.
Wow.
So like it's crazy. I mean, like I was on the tour bus when Hoobastank wrote that song, The Reason. I don't know if you know, like, you remember that song, The Friggin' Reason. That was like every prom song of that, that year it came out. But I was on there, and I was talking to the Hoobastank guys, and we were like laughing. They were like, "We need to put out a song that's going to be a prom song. That's going to be the corniest song that girls are going to love, and they're going to send to their boyfriends, and they're going to want they'll want to say this is the song that speaks from our heart." And and I was on the tour bus, and we were like laughing, and like, I mean, I'm not credited for any, but like I came up with some of those lyrics. Said like, "This is corny. Cool, this line is so corny. You got to throw it in," And that song like was sold millions. It was like it was multi-platinum.
It's the prom song. Crazy. It's the wedding song.
Yeah.
It's maybe even funeral songs. I mean, that's crazy, Ray. Yeah. Wow, man. Look, I'll be the first before we let you go. I'll be the first to say like we definitely need a part 2. Because I mean, I don't even feel like we even started, even though it's been an hour. But this has been crazy. Like this has been like a lot to take in, knowing that you've worked with every artist that I can probably think of in my head, pretty much. I mean, just like I said before, just with Engelbert, himself is, is crazy. And the Spice Girls and Backstreet Britney and NSYNC. I mean, is there anybody you haven't worked with that you would love to?
I mean, there are artists that I would love to, like, well, The Cure, for example.
Cool.
The Cure, I'm a humongous fan. I saw them my 75th time seeing The Cure 2 years ago in Ireland. All right.
I've never seen them once.
Wow. They're incredible. And I've never worked with The Cure. I'm almost scared of working with them because I love the mystique. I love the distance that I have with them because I'm such a fan of the music that if I started to know the band themselves, I think that would actually detract from my appreciation of the band.
And believe it or not, as my own experience with that, it does.
Mm-hmm.
It does. I find it does. Not that they did anything wrong, but like, we always say before, like, we're huge fans of this person, that person. And then we actually get, Matt and I got to hang out with these individuals and we love them as people now, but as fans, we're less fans now. Yeah. And it definitely detracts the whole everything. Even though we grew up with these guys for 20 years, listening to their music, getting to know them on a personal level, hanging out with them backstage for hours, we see them differently now. And it just changed with one experience.
Yeah, but it also works in the opposite direction too. Like, I've never been a fan of Dashboard Confessional. You know,
I love Dashboard Confessional.
Come on, man.
Okay, so
what you been doing?
I loved one of their songs. I can't remember what it was called, but I loved one of their songs. But I became Dashboard's publicist. I became Chris Carrabba's publicist. And I worked with him for like 3 or 4 years, and he and I became really good friends. I hung out with his wife, met his kids, you know, we became really, really good friends. And then I started to really appreciate Dashboard, like from that, like, you know, and now because I know Chris, because I know, like, you know, his wife, because I know the guys in the band, I actually appreciate the music a lot more, you know. I would never have liked it prior to, I mean, I probably might have, but I just never gave it a chance because it was just so, it was so for me, I thought of it as such cardboard cutout emo.
Yes.
You know?
I can agree with that. That is a great way to describe the music.
I mean, they kind of, a lot of ways, they kind of almost made emo into what it is now, you know?
Definitely.
And like, but yeah, I mean, like, Chris is incredible. Really super nice guy. He's a much nicer guy than you. I mean, everybody knows him as a nice guy, but like, you know, when the doors are closed and it's just you and him, you know, he's awesome, you know? So,
man, way to throw out that last liner.
Being on that Spider-Man soundtrack sure did help too. You know, that doesn't hurt anything ever, anytime.
Nope.
Ray, my man, dude, this has been awesome. Like Caleb said, you're welcome back anytime. Any of your friends or clients, you know, anything we can do to help, let us know. We'll be there. I can't thank you enough for taking this time to hang out with us tonight, man.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you guys are great. I mean, as I said, like, I love the show. I mean, I love when you, like, you know, when you guys first reached out to me, I think it was Lamal.
Yeah.
We wanted like interview with Lamal, which we will get. I will get him on with you guys. I promise.
Thank you so much, man.
But yeah, I mean, like, you know, and likewise, like, you know, we'll, like, you know, I'm sure we'll be in contact quite a bit.
Yeah, we're pretty good pen pals with everybody that we've ever had on the show. So we'll definitely be in contact. And like Matt said, if you need anything at all, man, you know, even for yourself, like, you know, just let us know. You need anything promoted, we'll happily put it on our socials and do whatever, you know, whatever you ask, man. We're definitely a lending hand in this whole thing that we do.
Set aside one show so we can just talk about my ghost hunting.
Yes.
Oh, I forgot.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we're gonna do a part two and then part 3, and then maybe a part 4.
You heard it here, folks. You heard it here. Just that little teaser for the next one.
Yes. To be continued.
Well, thanks, guys. This has been great. It's been awesome.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. Hey, this has been another episode of the Frickin' Frack Show, podcast for the fans, by the fans. Peace.
Whoa! It's the Frickin' Frack Show, a podcast for the fans, by the fans.
This is the Frickin' Frack Show, a podcast